All right, let's dive into a story that feels like it's straight out of a fantasy novel, but what if it isn't? We're talking about a place where myth, history, and science all collide, right there on the ocean floor. Picture this, a magnificent golden city, supposedly built by a god, that just disappears. This is the story of Dwarka, and the incredible modern-day hunt to find out if it was real all along.
So could a myth that's over 5,000 years old actually be real? For centuries, that's all people thought Dwarka was. Just a great story from the old texts. But what if they were wrong? What if there's a real, physical city buried under the waves? A city that could literally change our understanding of ancient history? That's the question we're digging into.
Okay, so first up, a city lost to the sea. And the crazy thing is, our story doesn't start thousands of years ago. Nope, it starts much more recently, with a discovery that sent absolute shockwaves through the worlds of both archaeology and faith.
So, try to picture this. It's 1983. A team of Indian archaeologists dives into the Arabian Sea, right off the coast of Gujarat. As they go deeper, something incredible comes into view. Not just rocks, not coral reefs, but massive man-made walls, giant stone pillars. This was clearly evidence of a well-planned, sophisticated city just sitting there on the seabed. You can imagine the first question on everyone's mind, right? Could this really be the legendary Dwarka?
Now, to really get why that discovery was such a big deal, we've got to jump in our time machine and go way, way back. We need to look at the ancient legend that started this whole search in the first place.
So the story goes like this. Lord Krishna's capital, Mathura, was constantly under attack. He needed a new, safe place for his people. So what does he do? He prays to Varuna, the god of the sea. And Varuna grants him this huge piece of land, we're talking something like 150 square kilometers, that was literally pulled up from the ocean. Then the divine architect himself, Vishwakarma, gets the job of building a city on it. And, well, you can bet it was going to be a city fit for a god.
And oh man, what a city it was supposed to be. The ancient text describes something just out of this world. We're talking over 900,000 palaces made of gold, silver, and precious gems. It was a masterpiece of city planning, right? It had roads that led straight to a huge seaport, advanced irrigation systems, which was super rare back then, plus these incredible gardens and markets. It wasn't just a place to live, it was basically a paradise on earth.
But, as with all great stories, this golden age couldn't last forever. The city's doom was sealed by not one, but two powerful curses. First, after the great Mahabharata war, Gandhari cursed Krishna's entire clan, the Yadavas, saying they would destroy themselves. Then, Krishna's own son, Samba, made the huge mistake of mocking some powerful sages, who cursed him to be the cause of that destruction. And wouldn't you know it, the prophecies came true. The Yadavas grew arrogant, and during a wild festival, they all fought and wiped each other out. After Lord Krishna departed from the world, the sea god Varuna simply took his land back, and the entire city of Dwarka was swallowed by the waves. Gone. And for thousands of years, that's how the story ended. It was just a legend, right? A powerful tale in the scriptures. But then came the 20th century, and a handful of researchers who had this crazy idea. What if the myth was actually history?
The man leading this charge was Dr. S.R. Rao. He's basically the father of marine archaeology in India. And this whole mission was based on this one simple but revolutionary idea. He famously said, "I don't consider the scriptures as religious books, but as historical documents." Think about that. That one belief gave him the drive to look for a city that most of the world had written off as pure fantasy.
And believe me, this was not an easy search. It was a long, tough slog. It started back in the 60s, just with some digs on land that turned up old pottery. A small clue. That was enough to fuel Dr. Rao's 12 underwater expeditions in the 80s and early 90s, often with barely any money and pretty basic tech. But then, in the 2000s, everything changed. High-tech sonar came into the picture, and suddenly they could map the entire seafloor. And what they saw was jaw-dropping, extensive, well-planned ruins. And it all leads up to 2024, when the Indian government launched a major new expedition, finally bringing Dwarka's story to the whole world.
Okay, so this is the part where it gets really good. This is where myth and archaeology just click into place. All those descriptions from ancient texts, thousands of years old, they started matching up, one by one, with what the scientists were actually finding down there.
The connections are just mind-blowing. Check this out. The Mahabharata says Dwarka was a fortified city with huge walls. Well, archaeologists found a massive stone wall over 500 meters long. The legends talk about a big seaport. Guess what? They found these unique, three-holed stone anchors. The stories describe grand palaces, and yep, they found the remains of huge stone pillars. The texts say it was a well-planned city, and the sonar scans show a clear grid-like layout. I mean, come on, the parallels are just undeniable.
But wait, it gets even crazier. The most shocking discovery of all. They found artifacts that dated back to the time of the Mahabharata, which was expected, but then they carbon dated some artifacts, and the result left everyone speechless. 9,000 years old. Let that sink in for a second. That's not just old, it's ancient. We're talking about a civilization that could be older than the Harappan civilization, one of the oldest we know of. This could literally rewrite the history books.
So, at this point, we have the legend, and we have the physical proof. But there's still a huge question mark, right? How did this amazing city end up at the bottom of the sea? Well, science has a pretty convincing answer.
Turns out, there's solid geological data that shows a massive, rapid rise in sea levels right around that time, probably around 5000 BCE. It was likely a huge climate event at the end of the last ice age. So it wasn't one giant wave that wiped the city out. It was a gradual rise of the ocean, slowly swallowing the coast. And that lines up perfectly with what the scientists found, a real-world natural disaster that became the basis for the legend of the sea reclaiming its land.
And this incredible story, where myth and science meet, has made Dwarka a really important part of India's identity today. I mean, just this year, on February 25, 2024, Prime Minister Narendra Modi actually dived down to the site himself. He offered a peacock feather, a symbol of Lord Krishna. That was such a powerful moment. It showed that Dwarka isn't just some old ruin anymore. It's a living, breathing part of the nation's heritage. When you look at the whole story, it really teaches you something amazing. It shows us that faith and science don't have to be enemies. In fact, they can work together. The ancient faith in the story of Dwarka is what sparked decades of real hard science. And that science, in turn, led to a discovery that honors the original story. They're like two different trails leading to the top of the same mountain, to the same truth. And that leaves us with one final, pretty mind-bending thought. If Dwarka is real, what else is out there? It completely blurs that line we draw between myth and history, doesn't it? It makes you wonder, how many other ancient legends that we've always dismissed as fantasy are actually real histories, just waiting for someone to find the proof? What other secrets are just waiting to be uncovered?